So I was trying to understand like what kind of content could we create that only we could create. And I realized that we have data, we have information that nobody else has.
At the time of this recording, -2 degrees in the Midwest, but the real estate market was still hot. So I'm excited to be chatting today with Dave Chung out of the North Shore area of Chicago, an area that I'm very familiar with. Amazing restaurants, really, really fun area close by to Chicago. Dave is a top producing real estate agent. Over the last 9 years, him and his wife have built a $50 million business. They're absolutely crushing it with their sphere of influence in their local community. So I wanted to bring Dave on the show today to share with us a couple of the ideas on how he's combating some challenges in the current market, and also how to hear how he grew a business like that. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So aside from the friends that we have in common, everyone was telling me I needed to talk to you. I just wanted to hear, how are you dealing with the low inventory market? Now, as it stands, half of the country has more inventory than they know what to do with, right? If you go to Florida, you can't trip without seeing a for sale sign due to hurricanes and whatever. Same thing in certain coastal areas where prices went crazy. Now near you, prices went crazy, but inventory kept getting lower and lower and lower. It's like a game of limbo, real estate limbo. And you, despite that, you and your wife have been able to continuously grow your business. So I'm just curious, what strategies have you used to help and serve your clients in a market where there's no homes for sale?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think part of the ability to continue to grow is just capturing more market share, right? If there's less homes for sale and you want to continue to do the same amount of business, you're going to have to just capture more of the share of the market. So that's one. But in terms of like just dealing with the low inventory, I mean, I think it's a couple of things. It's both a buyer and a seller issue. For sellers, there's still a lot of sellers out there, but they just might not want to put their house on the market for whatever reason. And for us, that's oftentimes the reason that they don't want to put their house on the market is because they have nowhere to go. Right. So if you had already had a place picked out, fine, like you'll list your house and you're doing great. But we have a lot of clients that need to find the thing to buy before they list, right? So that's why, again, it's really a two-sided problem there, both for sellers and buyers. So with folks like that, for example, there's a couple of strategies that we employ. I mean, one is, first of all, you can just list your house, right? And in our market, sellers are still dictating timing, terms, all of those things. So it's January right now. You could put your house on the market and say, hey, I don't want to actually move out until August 1st. And I want a quick close and a long rent back or post-closing occupancy. And that will actually fly. Like you'll be able to do that in our market. And so that oftentimes gives sellers the confidence to put their house on the market, because then they'll have their equity in their bank account and they'll be a much more motivated and prepared buyer, if they're buying in the same market.
That's really interesting. So I want to just go into that really quickly. So what you're doing is, in essence, enabling sellers with the education on the additional power they now have in the dynamic. And because of that education, they are then more empowered to list right now versus freaking out over what their next purchase is going to be.
Exactly, 100%. And I mean, the challenge is, obviously we don't want our seller to end up homeless, right? We don't want them to be in a situation where they have nowhere to go. So
these millionaire homeless people they're a tough demographic.
It's a real struggle. It's a real struggle out there. But the reality is, I mean, you're comfortable in your home. You already have a house, right? Why would I risk everything, to maybe buy the house across the street? Well, so there's obviously the dynamic there of kind of understanding the risks involved, so you do need some kind of backup plan, or at least the ability to, be flexible if that's going to work for you. And a lot of times for our clients, they kind of have to do that because they need to sell in order to buy, right? They need the equity from their house to be able to buy the next one. And that's oftentimes, that's the best way to do it. You just put your house on the market, ask for a long close or post-closing occupancy. You've got your cash in the bank, and now we can go be the buyer out there in the same market. And this is pretty typical for people that are, upsizing, downsizing, that sort of thing within our market.
I think it's important. I think it's a really good marketing opportunity to almost like market the fact that, let's say 70% of your clients are selling before they have a new home in mind. Because when a customer hears that, they're immediately thinking, oh, well, that's the exact boat I'm in. If this is how people are doing it now, I guess I shouldn't be so scared either. It's almost like putting that comparison in their head
Hmm.
versus your client thinking that they're doing something that like isn't the norm. Whenever
Right.
clients think that they're not following the norm, they get more nervous. And you obviously, because you are with clients each and every day, you can kind of walk them through this is the new normal based on your experience and that they're going to be just fine. And you
Exactly.
obviously
And
give them
that
testimonials from clients who did it and were just fine last month.
right. I mean, that makes perfect sense because I think the average consumer, homeowner is thinking, "Oh, I have to find the thing first that I want to go to before I sell." And, I haven't thought of your idea, but I think it's great if looking at our own data, to see of the clients that we listed their homes, how many of them, didn't have their next place picked out yet until we listed their house. That is a pretty large percentage. So I think it's important to look at, information, data, insights that only you have and put that out there as marketing material, as content, that sort of thing.
The other interesting thing you mentioned was expanding your market share. And I want to go deeper on that because I think people listening are going to be like, well, obviously, Dave, of course I want to increase my market share. That sounds awesome. Of course I want to make more money. But the honest piece of that is that when we're in a low inventory market, it slowly weeds out a lot of other agents and it gives the people in production a chance to be in more production.
Hmm.
And every agent in theory should either be in one of two camps. They should either be the person in a lot of production in their area with that market share. But if they're not, I still think there's an opportunity to market your brokerage's statistics as well. So maybe I'm younger Dave, maybe I'm Dave in 2016, and I personally do not have that market share. But I'm
Hmm.
at Compass Realty, which I know you're at, and my office does have that market share. I then, as that new agent, am going to be marketing my company stats as my own, so that I can at least let people know that, like, yes, you have a better shot of navigating this market with myself and my office because we have people coming to us on a regular basis. And you will have opportunities with us that you will not have with someone that doesn't have that share. What other
Absolutely.
strategies have you used to, in essence, like grow that market share?
Yeah, well, I mean, to your point, just then, like if you are a younger or newer agent that doesn't have, a ton of volume that's just kind of building on itself. I mean, I was in that position 9, 8, 7 years ago, and I did just that. I utilized my office's content and listings and marketed them and put them out there, not as my own, obviously. Like I give credit where credit's due, but that at least gives you the fuel that you need to really showcase, kind of what's going on in your local market. I remember when I first started, there wasn't a lot of people. There weren't a lot of people doing video, out in the market, and so I just started doing video tours of other listings in my office, and the agents loved it because they weren't doing them. And I remember then I saw a friend of mine and he's like, man, you're killing it. Like how many listings do you have? And I was like, I don't have any. Like these are all these are all just listings in my office. But no, again, I'm not trying to deceive anybody, but it was really just like the ability to put that out there to show that, hey, I'm busy, I'm doing things. And that really helped, grow our business when we were just starting out.
Well, and if you think about all the tools that an agent has available right now, it's pretty off the chains ridiculous. I mean, I'm demoing some AI video products right now where I could make a video on the top 5 homes for sale in Wilmette right now, and I could in essence load those pictures into my AI software and tell it to come up with a voiceover, or I could do my own voiceover of those properties and explain in 5 seconds each why this is the best one. This one's the bathroom, this one's the man cave, this one's the backyard, this one's the proximity. For information in any or all of these listings, please reach out to me directly. Right? It
Mhm.
creates that perception that you went and you toured all these houses and you did all the things, but you didn't actually have to do that. But customers don't need to know that. You're not stating that you did. You're sharing real estate knowledge and advice in a hyper local area to show that market knowledge and obviously then make it seem like you maybe have a little bit more market share than you do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, it really just kind of builds on itself because at some point you will have your own listings and your own content and whatnot. And the more you put out there, the more that comes back at you.
So let's jump to that. Like let's jump to content and putting something out there. So we were chatting before the video here, and so many agents when they think of social media and when they think of content, right? I'll say content and social are the same thing, whether it's email content, Facebook content, Instagram content. Um, most people are looking for an easy way out, and they're looking for something that they can quickly copy paste, repurpose, or something in essence like they're looking to hire a company to like take away their social media, which is the biggest mistake I think a lot of people can make. But what they're not doing is creating unique content that, and even if they are, it doesn't always feel that unique. You've kind of solved for X in that equation in a unique way that actually isn't all that crazy once you think about it. Walk everyone through how you've kind of flipped that on its head.
Yeah, I mean, it the way you set it up there makes it sound like it's like this, groundbreaking idea. But really, I agree. I was getting tired of, seeing the same types of content out there. What is an inspection or what does an appraisal mean? Like people that are buying kind of have figured this out, at least in our market. So I was trying to understand like what kind of content could we create that only we could create. And I realized that we have data, we have information that nobody else has. And so specifically, like, most recently in the last month or so, I went back and I just looked at all of our listings last year in 2024 that had multiple offers. And I went and I wanted to look at each and every one of those offers and then start to pull data insights from those offers. What kind of things that they have in common, what were the things that really pushed the winning offer above the rest, and were there any trends or insights that I could pull from that. And if you think about it, like nobody else has that information, right? It's literally in my email, it's on my computer, it's in a spreadsheet, whatever. That's the only place it exists. But that data, that information is actually extremely valuable, to our buyers and to potential buyers that are, out there on social media, for example. So I went through, we had 11 listings in this really kind of tight knit market that had multiple offers. And I just went and looked at each and every offer and kind of pulled out, the commonalities of the winning offers and put that out there. And it was just like kind of a light bulb moment of like, wow, there's definitely more things like this, that we have, just that we see and experience every day. Those are the things to me that I think are most valuable, to the general public, to consumers, to our own clients. That's worked really well. Both buyers and sellers are really responding to that type of content. And other agents are too, which is always interesting. But it's definitely something that, like I said, only we could create, and only you or whomever out there listening can create, because it's something that you're the only one that has access to.
Well, what's fascinating here is, you can come on a podcast like this and share that information, because even if 100 other agents in Illinois decided that they wanted to do that, all of the data would look different. I
Yeah.
mean, like every city's data is going to be different. Every individual agent does things a little bit differently. But, when you then go and take that information and put it together, whether it's a page, whether it's a social media post, whether it's a video, it's very, very timely, number one. And the number one rule of content is that it needs to be recent information. And so, like a lot of times when I'm doing a video now on Instagram, I'll take whatever topic I'm talking on, and then I'll add to the label January 2025 or
Hmm.
current month, current year, so that people, when they're going to watch that, know that the content in there is fresh for this time period. And I think there's a huge desire for fresh content. And Google, from an SEO perspective, has been ranking that content better.
Right.
And so you've in essence done that with your own information, and now you can market it back to people in a really clever way. And when you go to compete for a listing presentation, for a buyer presentation, it's not just your words saying, "This is what we do. This is how I can list your house." This is specifically how people won. This
Right.
is not a study of all the business I've done. This is a study of the winners that I've helped, which is, hopefully all of your customers. And that in and of itself is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So
And
if you're
these are
listening,
all,
go ahead.
these are all things that, like, in the past you would just know kind of more anecdotally, right? Like, oh, well, I remember on this one we did this. But it's so much more powerful when you actually do the work and look at the data and then pull out like true insights, because then I can tell you in any meeting, like, oh, 64% of the offers were either cash or they waived their financing contingency. So you basically have to do that if you want to win. I can tell you that one with a financing contingency never beat a cash offer or one that waived their financing contingency. I can tell you that every winning offer was as is. Every winning offer did this, and this, and on average it was 9% over asking, whatever it is. Like, now you have very specific things you can share versus, just speaking in generalities or being super vague. And I think people like really respond well to that because they understand the data.
I mean, this is a marketing podcast first and foremost, but I mean, just from a general sales perspective, this is now striking me as something that like every agent should be doing just to educate themselves, right? Like, even if we're not planning to take this and create content, if we're in a tight market, and every market has its own unique challenges, right? It's not always inventory, but every agent needs to be studying their market and figuring out, how do I win in this current month, in this current city, wherever it is that you practice real estate. Because sometimes if it's not written down, or you just haven't taken the time to compare all the things next to each other, it's gonna be harder to write that next offer. And you're really gonna be putting your clients at a disservice. I wish more brokerages would actually take it upon themselves, especially for the newer agents, to help them look every month at how they need to craft an offer that month in that city, and almost have like a shared folder and resource of like, here's how to do it right now.
Right. Yeah, and that's something too. Like I've had a couple other agents contribute their data. I haven't quite extrapolated the insights yet, but that's another thing too that you can do, right? Especially if you're just starting out and you don't have the data yourself, you can just go to your office and say, hey, anybody want to work on this project together? Let's get all the information that we have. Let's figure out what the commonalities are, and we'll come up with some highlights, right? And that's, again, only data that you and your team or your office has. That could be super helpful. One other thing that I pulled, or a stat that I tracked, especially during the height of the pandemic and when things were just really bonkers, was basically our offer to contract ratio. So basically, how many offers did we write versus how many contracts we actually got signed. And that was an important stat, because at the kind of peak of all that, it was right around, I want to say 35 to 40%, which meant, and this is what I would tell buyers then, and I still do today, depending on what the number is that our contract to offer ratio is 35% right now. That means that on average, we're going to have to write at least 3 or 4 offers before you get a house. And that is a huge sort of, idea to help set expectations with buyers in a low inventory environment, that, hey, you can't fall in love with every house, first of all.
Right.
And number 2, like, we got to just start writing offers. And what that did is, as soon as we're out there in the market, they're like, okay, let's write, because chances are, like I said, when we're only at 35, 40%, we're not going to get it. We might not get it until the 4th or 5th one. And so even that's a piece of information that, again, at the time, I was the only one that had it. And it's specific to me. It's going to be different for somebody else.
Well, there's that extra safety net there. When you're in a market that tight, you have that flexibility to write an offer on a home that you like, but you're not 100% on, because someone else is going to buy that house irregardless. It's going to sell, and the seller is not going to be out anything. This is fascinating. This is really, to me, telling agents that they need to do their research more, and they need to, number 1, educate themselves, but number 2, use that educational material to then create something.
And that's exactly right. And even if you don't have your own data, right, chances are you have an MLS that has a ton of data. And the beauty now is that we also have AI, right? So just this past month, I exported a bunch of data from our MLS to a CSV file, right? Uploaded it to ChatGPT, and then just started asking ChatGPT questions about the data, right? And so what I wanted to find was, because everybody's asking me, hey, have the higher interest rates impacted the market? What's it doing? And my hunch was that, well, because I'm seeing it every day, is that there's more and more cash deals. And I wanted to go see, well, just how many more? And so I went to our data, and I'll tell you right now, in our market, 44% of the deals last year in 2024 closed with cash. 44%, which is insane. Like, it's a big number. And how was it in 2019? It was at like 23%. So we're more or less double, since the start of the pandemic, in terms of the number of cash deals that are out there. So again, like, this is information that everybody has access to, but what are some of the interesting insights that you can actually pull out from that and then turn into content, like you're saying? Because what does that mean to sellers? It means, like, look, more and more people are closing with cash. What does it mean to buyers? It means you either need to get cash or figure out how to have some kind of cash equivalent, right, when you're out there competing against cash offers.
Well, sometimes people say that, like, comparison is the death of happiness, right? Like, if I compare my watch to yours, I might be really depressed because I'm comparing my watch to the watch of a $50 million real estate agent over here. However, I think comparison can also be a very powerful motivator. And when you're talking about statistics and when you're talking about data, there's a lot of data points that you could share with a specific group of people with the purpose of motivating them. I saw a stat that the average age of a buyer right now is, I think it's like at an all-time high. It's like 37, and I'm sure in certain markets it's higher. But when I hear that, I think, okay, well, if the average age of a buyer is 37, I want to market that to all of my 38-year-olds, because all those 38-year-olds are going to feel behind and they're going to have a little bit of extra motivation to do that. Or my super savvy 24-year-olds, my 24-year-olds who have a great income, great assets, I'm going to market that stat to them to make them feel like, hey, this is your opportunity to really get ahead of the curve and to build some wealth in real estate because you have the means. You're going to be so far ahead of your friends. And, agents, guys, you pay dues to NAR, to whatever state you're in, and to a local association. Take those stats, like Dave said, upload them into ChatGPT or Claude, and say, give me 5 interesting insights that my buyers or sellers will find interesting. Take them, and you could say, make them one sentence, make them funny, make them whatever, and use that information to then motivate your clients in whatever stage they might be in to action. Right? The idea is to take people who weren't thinking about buying a house and move them to thinking, or to take people that were thinking and move them to actually to buying.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think, when we think about local stats like that, like those are literally the most important things to me, like what's happening in the national real estate market or even across Chicagoland as a whole is obviously relevant, but it's really the hyper local stuff that I'm most concerned about and most interested in. And as you start doing the research, if you're creating content on that local data, when I started doing this, I was like, kind of like looking around, like, wait, how do I like fact check this? How do I know that what I'm thinking or what my observation of this data is true? And then I realized, like, oh, I'm the authority. I'm the expert. I'm the one that's doing it because nobody else is doing it. So it's not like you put some information out there. Obviously, you want to make sure you're checking it because, again, you are responsible for it. But that to me was the kind of eye opener of the fact that, like, oh, I'm the guy that's putting out the information. Nobody else is doing that, right? And it's got to be more than just like days on market, how many homes sold, this, or like nobody, like, who cares unless you're going to track that over a period of time and say, oh, this is interesting. Look at this. Look how the days on market went down when the number of homes on the market went down, whatever it is. Like, you got to come up, you got to pull out some insight from the data. You can't just regurgitate, what's out there. You just got to do the work, like I said earlier.
Well, and I mean, let's think about this. So, like 25 years ago, 30 years ago, people did need their realtors to come up with all of that information because it helped them figure out where the market was and to make decisions. But right now, I mean, Zillow, Redfin, the 10 biggest Rocket Homes, the 10 biggest real estate brands in the world have those statistics, and their AI can rattle them off faster than any realtor can, right? We need to
I would say yes and no, because, like, I look at those things and they're still too broad for what
yeah.
I'm doing, right? So, like, and again, everybody's market's different. But if I have a buyer that's looking at, for example, what we call the cage. This is a very specific neighborhood.
The Cage, you said?
It's called the Cage, and it's called that because it's Chestnut, Ashland, Greenwood, and Elmwood. It's 4 streets, okay. North, south, and then maybe like 8 blocks east, west. Nobody has that data except for me or the 6 other agents that sell in the Cage, right? If you go on Redfin and say, hey, let's, what's the average, or when a listing comes up in the Cage, for example, they're pulling across the entire zip code and they're saying houses in Wilmette seem to sell fast, or, like whatever the AI comes up with.
But it's not, there's no, like for these, I get what you're saying, for these geographic areas that actually matter, because that's how people in your community define them, that definition doesn't exist on the internet because, in essence, it can't. We have one by us, Forest Hills, Michigan. It's not a real city. It's not a real area. It's kind of a school district. It's kind of an area, but that's where everyone wants to move. But Zillow can't give you data on that.
No, but I bet there's an agent in Forest Hills that is the expert there, that's got all the data maybe in their head or
Yeah, and I
wherever.
think every single agent I meet with wants to be the expert in Forest Hills because the homes are expensive.
Right.
But
So just be the expert. That's what I'm saying. Like you can just be the expert. And that was the realization I had when I was like putting this out there for the first time, is like, wait, how do I fact check this? How do I double, it's like, no, there's no expert. I'm the expert. Right. And so you
I,
have to like obviously own that and put it out there and be confident in what your analysis is. But that's hugely
I
important.
think this is something that people can grab onto. The way that you just explained it with the cage neighborhood, I want everyone listening to come up with right now an area near them that they represent that doesn't actually exist. That's not a real area. It's not the city. It's not the county. It's a name of an area that you guys use locally, but that Zillow doesn't. Come up with an area like that and put information together about it and share that with the community, because I bet you that if there's 5,000 agents in your market, 4,990 have not done that yet. And that
Right.
could be an absolutely huge differentiator for, I think, almost anyone listening to this show.
Yeah, no, I agree. 100%.
So give me a couple things to leave on. So you've built a great business, husband wife team with one assistant doing 40 to $50 million a year. What's next? It's not, I'm probably talking to a lot of people like you. It's probably not tripling to 150 because I'm assuming you want to spend time with your family. What are you working on in the coming year?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think, and we were talking about this earlier, like I don't have like massive aspirations to grow in volume or even in team size. Like we do plenty of business to basically allow ourselves to have a good, fruitful life, if you will. Right. I think for us, it's then, more important about, okay, how do we serve our clients better? What are the additional services or things that we can do to make it more efficient, to give us maybe more time back for ourselves, allow us to go on, vacation more often, whatever it may be. And so those efficiencies are things that we're constantly looking at. This last year was the first year I hired basically like a fractional CFO
Mm.
to really kind of look at our books on a regular basis. Like, and I have a lengthy call with them every month to make sure that we're doing things financially that make sense, that we're kind of in line with standards or norms around the industry, but then to also kind of make sure that we're planning for the future. And as many agents know, cash flow is lumpy and can be challenging. And so being able to forecast and say, okay, we've got runway for this or that, and I've got this coming in, so we're good here, whatever that may be, without having that extra insight, it all falls on me. And it's just another thing that I don't always have time for. Right. And
It's
so,
really interesting you say that. My wife and I hired a fractional chief operating officer for our business I just do a call with her twice a week, 15 minutes. She tells me anything I'm missing, anything I'm being negligent on, any major things I might have missed in any of the companies that we run and operate. And it's been a game changer. I didn't need someone full time, but I needed a little bit of accountability that was a little bit outside of the company itself.
yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And I think, yeah, kind of finding those little pockets where you could really use the help. And not only because you're doing it yourself, for example, for now, but also because you really just need that outside expertise,
Mm-hmm.
to make your business operate better. And so that's one thing, and that's been huge. And I think there's a lot more opportunities like that for us to really optimize things, so that we're working really efficiently, because like I said earlier, like our business is really hands on. Our clients expect us to be there for every showing. We're doing all these things. We're spending a lot of time with people. So what are the things that I can take away or take off of my plate that not only free my time up, but like I said, more importantly, just provide outside expertise that I don't necessarily have
I
already.
love that. We always like to refer agents to kind of like doing an hourly wage exercise on yourself. Write down every single thing you do in a given day, and it either better be really, really fun and give you a lot of mental happiness, or it needs to be a high dollar payoff activity. And anything else, you need to look at and say, how much per hour could I pay someone to do this for? And if so, would there be a quality or quantity effect or defect on my business?
Right.
And you can usually find three or four things. David, I love this. So If an agent listening has a client that wants to get into the super competitive Wilmette market, how would they get a hold of you for that referral? How would they get a hold of you with any questions they might have from the show?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, pretty easy to find online. Dave Chung, Chung. You can find us on Instagram as well, Dave and Amy Chung, or just text or give me a call, 312-399-0630.
Awesome. Dave, thank you so much for being on the show today. And everyone, if you have a client in the North Shore or Chicago area, give Dave a call. He's the guy. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.